Yes, Chief Sam.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Cito Ortiz, and I'm the chief of the CHP's Central Division, representing the Central Valley. Thank you for being here today. Before I begin, I wanted to thank Chief Greg Terry for hosting today's press conference. Chief, thank you for allowing us to be at your facility today to talk about something that's very important. It's my distinct honor to recognize individuals who are standing behind me. But first, let me begin with Assemblymember Vince Fong, representing the 34th District. Assemblymember Fong, we thank you for your leadership and for being an advocate for safer communities and for being a champion for victims' rights of illegal street racing and sideshow activity. You and your staff have done a phenomenal job in authoring Assembly Bill 3. And I've said it before and I'll say it again this morning, that law enforcement has been asking for more tools and resources to help us combat illegal street racing and sideshow activity. And without a shadow of a doubt, Assemblymember Fong has delivered. It's also my distinct honor to recognize our Mayor of Bakersfield, Karen Go, Bakersfield Police Chief Greg Terry, our District Attorney Cindy Zimmer, and our Sheriff here in Kern County, Donna Youngblood. I'd like to share a few words on behalf of the CHP, and I want to start off with addressing the family members. To the family members of victims who have tragically lost their lives because of the senseless acts of illegal street racing and sideshow activity, on behalf of the CHP and law enforcement professionals in the state, we offer our condolences. I want to thank you, in addition, for creating awareness to the dangers of illegal street racing and sideshow activity. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2021, the CHP responded to more than 29,000 calls for service involving street racing and sideshows, which is a staggering increase from the 3,500 calls we received in 2019. The violence caused by illegal street racing is troublesome, and it's our solemn duty to prevent these types of crimes and tragedies from occurring. As many of you may know, that a lot of these incidents often lead to violent collisions, where not only are the participants getting injured or losing their lives, but spectators and innocent individuals. And I wanted to point out that each one of these crashes, whether someone's injured or loses their life, is 100% preventable. In response, with proactive law enforcement, utilizing available resources such as air and ground supports, and collaborating through training and funding, we will provide a strong presence in our communities and the state. For the CHP, we remain steadfast in our commitment to reducing violent crimes on California's roadways. As we head into the summer months, is when our fatal collisions tend to increase, and sideshow activity, street racing, also tends to increase. We would like to remind the public, if you are caught in the middle of a dangerous situation of reckless driving or sideshow activity, we encourage you to be a good witness, to call 911 and provide a description of the vehicles and or possible suspects. At this time, it's my honor to introduce Assemblymember Vince Fong of the 34th District.
Thanks, Chief Ortiz. I'm honored to be here with you, Chief Terry, Sheriff Youngblood, District Attorney Zimmer, Mayor Go. We are here to show a united front and a show of force to keep our streets safe. In authoring Assembly Bill 3 that was signed into law, that bill allowed judges and empowered them and gave them the discretion to suspend a driver's license for up to 6 months. And my goal was to curb one of the most consequential and dangerous forms of illegal street racing activity, which is dangerous sideshows. We have seen a spike in sideshows in our community and throughout the Central Valley and across the state of California. And given their nature, sideshows are unpredictable, leading to devastating wrecks, violence, and senseless deaths in our communities. There's not a weekend that goes by where there's not a street race or sideshow. Just a few weeks ago, there were more than 300 cars who took over our streets. Many came from outside of our community. That's why I'm leading a bipartisan effort to secure an additional $5.5 million for the enforcement against illegal sideshows. This funding will support state and local task forces to crack down on dangerous sideshows that have become a major public safety challenge for our local law enforcement officials and communities throughout the state. I know our local law enforcement has undertaken numerous enhanced enforcement operations. I personally have gone on ride-alongs to see them firsthand. I'm also leading an effort with Assemblyman Jesse Gabriel to expand last year's legislation to prohibit sideshows on parking lots in retail shopping centers. AB 2000 is that bill, and that will allow law enforcement and the courts to crack down on sideshows in parking lots with license suspensions. Sideshows in parking lots are especially dangerous because of the higher number of pedestrians and vehicles that are in a confined and small area. Sideshows have resulted in drivers losing control of their vehicles and striking people in the crowds, or other motorists, resulting in serious injuries and fatalities. AB 2000 and the funding are needed to give law enforcement authorities the tools to save lives. As mentioned before, all of these injuries, all of these deaths are 100% preventable. And we will continue to fight to secure this funding and pass this new legislation. As we go into the summer months, again, we are telling the public that if you are caught, we will take your vehicle, we will enforce the law, there will be accountability, but do not engage in this activity. It is dangerous, it is reckless, and there are serious consequences. So let me now introduce our dedicated police chief, Chief Greg Terry.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here, and I certainly want to thank the representatives that are here behind me. And what you're really seeing is a picture of partnerships. Something I've talked about before is in Kern County, we have very close working relationships with all of our allied agencies. And in fact, we partner with each other every day to go out and protect our communities in a variety of different ways. Street racing is sideshows, the takeover events, they've been described in a lot of different ways, are not victimless crimes. And our community has experienced the consequences of this dangerous activity with loss of life. We've seen assaults, robberies, crimes of violence, police officers being struck by vehicles, assaulted with bottles and rocks and various things at these events. We know that they are dangerous in and of themselves, and then with the large numbers of people that are gathered together, these events have shown to be very dangerous. Over the last year, we have arrested and cited hundreds of people and impounded hundreds of vehicles, seized weapons, and we will continue to do that because this is, like we've talked about before, crimes of violence. This is not just simply teenagers out joyriding or demonstrating the speed of their vehicle. This activity is dangerous. The activity and the enforcement efforts that we have made over the last year were not made alone. The Bakersfield Police Department devotes tremendous amount of resources to this activity every single day, every single weekend, focusing on street racing. And the successes that we've had have not been alone. The CHP in particular has been a critical partner in enabling us to go out and have special operations. And I'm very grateful to Chief Ortiz and Captain Pagano and the CHP for their support locally. And they've been out with us on many of these special operations. Without their support, we would not have seen the successes that we've had and able to curb, disrupt, interrupt, and prevent this type of activity from occurring. But we also have partnerships in Sheriff Youngblood and our District Attorney Zimmer in incarcerating and prosecuting these individuals that are engaging in this conduct. So as much as we are enforcing these all available laws when these things are occurring, we're not stopping on the nights of the event. We're doing follow-up. We're going out in the next days and weeks after that and impounding vehicles. We will continue to be diligent in following up on those that are engaging in this type of dangerous activity in our community. And again, I want to thank the Assemblymember Fong for his support of law enforcement, for his dedication to safe communities, and for this press conference here today.
Good morning, my name's Cindy Zimmer. I'm Kern County's District Attorney. Street racing, street takeovers, sideshows, they are dangerous, they are illegal, and those who participate in that type of activity will be prosecuted. Street racing has catastrophic consequences to innocent people. When one travels through the streets and even out on our highways at high rates of speed, and coupling that with difficulty in reaction time, and also that the majority of people who are involved in street racing are younger people in their early 20s, that leads to catastrophic consequences. I myself have gone out to crime scenes and seen what has happened when people have been involved in street racing and cars cause death to other people, the crashes. Street racing is inherently dangerous to human life, and as such can be prosecuted as a homicide. We are prosecuting people at this time who've engaged in street racing that resulted in the death of another for murder. So to young people this summer who have the urge when they roll up to a stop sign that they might make a split-second decision to get involved in something like that, I would say don't do it. Don't ruin your life. It is not worth it. And to the older people who know better, you should know better, because we're going to prosecute you to the full extent of the law. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. I just want to make a couple quick points. To people that are out street racing, what you do is you take away from the resources of law enforcement and makes it very difficult for us to respond for other calls for services that are occurring at the same time. When one of these events occur, it takes a lot of resources to prevent it. And the second point I want to make is we use the sheriff's helicopter to help oversee these street racing. They see the helicopter, they tend to want to break up and leave, and we use that resource. What you probably don't know is in that helicopter is part of this team. We have a Bakersfield Police Department police officer that's in there as an observer, partnering with the sheriff to help prevent these type of incidents. So this team is doing everything they can. The number one thing that's occurring, not only in street racing, but in our state of California, is we're not holding people responsible for their actions. Until we start doing that, we're going to have these incidents of street racing and other crimes. So we need to start holding people accountable for their actions. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Karen Go, Mayor of the City of Bakersfield. On February 15th, around 5 o'clock, it's a cool night, I stood at Challenger Park with family, with friends of Bianca Flores. Bianca Flores, a 19-year-old who had been taken too soon by street racing. Bianca was described as kind, warm-hearted, a smile that lit up the room. We were there because of a reckless and senseless act. Bakersfield is a great community in which to live and in which to raise a family. We want to keep it that way. That's why our law enforcement officials will cite and arrest those who participate in these illegal and dangerous activities. Reckless drivers are putting lives at risk. Our city, our county will not tolerate their treacherous actions. So today we call upon our community to unite with Assemblyman Fong, with DA Zimmer, with our law enforcement, to stop the disregard for human life, to stop the senseless injuries and deaths. We know, as a community, this is not tolerable. So speak up, unite with us. Thank you so much to my colleagues for their leadership. We're very grateful for all of you being here, and we welcome your questions now.
Questions? Yeah.
Can you speak to how the $5.5 million specifically will help law enforcement efforts protect people?
So if we were able to secure this in the state budget, there will be $5 million dedicated to the CHP and to local law enforcement to allow them to continue these enforcement actions and these task forces that are occurring right now throughout the state of California and within Kern County. And then there'll be $500,000 for a public education campaign to encourage young drivers not to participate in sideshow activities, street takeovers, and street racing.
If I could, it doesn't give us more people to do this, but it allows us to pay the current officers overtime to work these type of events.
Question for Sheriff Youngblood. And you talked about people, drivers not being held accountable. Let's talk about what the current penalty or lack there is and what you think there should be.
Yeah, I believe that someone engages in this type of behavior ought to lose their car for good. It should be towed, impounded, and then sold to help pay the cost of what this costs taxpayers throughout our community. Sacramento has got to step up and partner and understand that by not holding them accountable, this problem is going to get worse. And the only way to do that is to take their cars permanently.
One of the challenges for certain law enforcement officials is that the sentences have been too light on some of these offenses. Has there been any thought about legislation to address the sentencing for these specific type of activities?
Well, we passed AB 3 to do driver's license suspensions. We're expanding that now through AB 2000 to hopefully get that signed to law. To if someone was engaged in a street takeover or a sideshow in a parking lot, that they would also get a driver's license suspension. Certainly, there are other efforts to do what Sheriff Youngblood has indicated to increase consequences through impoundments. And certainly through AB 3 that we passed, it was the first time that we've ever defined what a sideshow is in state law to give the district attorney the ability to continue to prosecute those who engage in this activity. More needs to be done, not only through more consequences, but through more resources. We certainly need more officers. We need more deputies. We need more resources, and we need more consequences. Yes.
If you're involved in a speed contest, a speed race, and you kill someone, the penalty can be second-degree murder, excuse me, which carries 15 years to life. However, it's the misdemeanor conduct in which we can't punish, the excessive speed, which there are a number of misdemeanors that but misdemeanors these days, because of the decriminalization and what's happening with AB 109 and the different propositions that have passed, it is very, very difficult to hold the misdemeanors accountable.
Yes.
For Chief Terry, I guess you mentioned. I think it was you that talked about hundreds of arrests and citations. Are any of those? I'm guessing some of them are repeat offenders. And will this new law, AB 3, help in that regard?
So, over the last probably more than a year, we've cited hundreds of individuals, impounded hundreds of vehicles, like I said. Whether or not any of those are repeat offenders, I don't know the answer to that. My assumption would be, my experience tells me that is very likely. To speak to some of what the DA just talked about, and being able to hold people accountable and make the consequence such that it's a deterrent for them to engage in that type of activity in the future. That's the challenge that law enforcement is having. The sheriff talked about holding people accountable and having the consequences such that the penalties are a deterrent to stop them from engaging that type of activity. Certainly we see it in street racing and in other areas as well. But there's no question that we have cited a number of individuals repeatedly over the last year and a half. I just don't have those numbers specifically.
Jerry,
Yes.
these problems seem to be dramatically rising over the last year or over the last 5 years.
I'd say in the last 2 years in particular, we've seen much more of it locally. And we saw it really skyrocket in 2020. And obviously 2020 is a year that is just a wild card for so many different things. And, is that the pandemic and all of that lead to this type of activity? I don't know, but that's where we really saw it manifest itself here locally. But that's why I was talking about the partnerships that we have. The sheriff talked about having the helicopter, having the CHP partnership. And we put out press releases and we try to ensure, because one of the things that's really important to all of us is that the community understand that we know that this is an issue. We know how terrifying, how frightening it is to get caught up in the middle of an intersection where you're surrounded by individuals who are engaging this type of activity. We've had innocent victims in our community assaulted, robbed, and various other types of offenses occurring just by virtue of them being there. So part of today's message is also about our community's understanding that we know what's happening. We're making every effort that we can. And that's why this team is important. That's why the partnership here in particular, I've talked about with CHP. The CHP having the resources available to come out and partner with us in special operations is critical for us to continue to combat it here in our community.
You want to talk about the operation?
You know, we didn't address social media, but these are organized through social media. The public is on there. The public sees these posts. We want to know if we're missing one that's coming up day after tomorrow. We want somebody to call us and tell us so we can get ahead of it, because it's all driven by social media. That's like selling a ticket, and they do it in 30 seconds.
The operations that you guys support, what you guys are offering to the forces.
Absolutely. So a lot of what's been talked about today is the collaboration and training of resources. When you combine the resources of agencies such as with the Sheriff's Department here in Kern County or Bakersfield PD with our local CHP office, there's a lot of power in that. And we have a message for those people who are conducting these types of illegal activity. And the DA said it. And there's going to be strong prosecution. You can lose your vehicle. You lose your license as a hefty fine. But the message to those people who are conducting in that is it worth it? And the answer is absolutely not. To lose your life, to have someone injured, lose your license, lose your car, it's not worth it. So we will be watching. We will be taking swift action, aggressive enforcement action for those people who are violating that. So the CHP appreciates the efforts of the Assembly member and the additional funding and the task force. The CHP is working on specifics regarding that task force at this time, but we stand ready with our partners in law enforcement for that.
Chief Ortiz, can you say one more time how many calls we got last year for street racing?
Yes, so in 2021 we responded to over 29,000 calls related to street racing sideshow.
You got a question? Do you want? No. You good. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Oh.
for you, Vince, can you talk about the families of these victims, what they're saying to you? Are they pleading with you, please get a stricter legislation to stop these from happening?
Well, certainly over the past few years, I've gotten a chance to talk to a number of families who've lost loved ones or who have had young ones, injured in sideshows and street races, and it's heartbreaking. Those tragedies are 100% preventable, and they've taken that tragedy and they've used that to advocate for more tools and more resources for our law enforcement to keep our roads and our communities safe. Certainly, as what the sheriff has indicated, a lot of this is on social media, and so some of that funding that we would have would allow dedicated resources and dedicated individuals to kind of monitor and to go after the planners of these activities. What we saw recently, the arrests that were made, a number of those individuals were from outside of our community, coming into our community, organizing these sideshows and these street takeovers. So the collaboration of those behind me is tremendous. When I was on riding along with one of the enhanced street enforcement operations, it was the sheriff's helicopter, it was the CHP a plane, it was officers from all local agencies that were out in our community patrolling our streets and going after this behavior. And let me emphasize what the sheriff said, that our local law enforcement officers are doing a lot and resources are stretched thin. So when a street race or a dangerous takeover is occurring, that is resources, precious resources, going to address a serious situation. But there are also other serious crimes that are occurring in our community as well, and our community expects our law enforcement to respond to those as well. So this is a critical issue, because, as the chief says, this is not a victimless crime. This is a very, very dangerous and organized activity, but our community is taking it seriously, and we will provide as much consequences as allowable under the law to deter this behavior.
As an observer in those ride-alongs, what was your biggest takeaway from the watching these operations?
Well, it's happening throughout our community, whether it's Southwest Bakersfield, Northeast Bakersfield, in the rural areas of our county. This is something that has occurred we've seen a trend over the past 2 years. Our law enforcement is doing a tremendous job responding to calls. Our community is calling in and providing details, and so our message to the community is that we're taking this issue seriously. Our law enforcement is doing everything they can, and we're going to give them the resources they need to keep our community safe.